Mel, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I'm going to talk about a few miners that I don't own. I own 6 miners and 6 only. CleanSpark, Mara, Bitfarm, Cypher, Irene, and Wolf. But there are quite a few that I do find to be somewhat attractive. One of them is Bitdeer, BTDR. This is a monthly chart of Bitdeer. I put the monthly Ichimoku cloud. It's not quite there yet. You have a little bit of a leading span over here. It's just being in the cloud in about a year and a half from now. But currently you don't have that. What you end up having is the conversion line and the baseline, or Tenkan and the Kijun. You have the conversion line naturally is a little bit more leading line. It looks like it's kind of crossed above the Kijun or the baseline. This is a little bit of a bullish cross. Looks like we have a very nice bullish cross that's just happened so far for the month of July. And the candle so far is looking pretty nice. It went from about 10 bucks all the way to close to about 12 bucks. Right. It's a very, very nice kind of trend because it does look like it formed a higher low over here. And it does look like it wants to go higher. The question is whether or not we're overextended or not. Well, one thing to look at on the monthly is not overextended. If anything, the 20-month moving average, because of these two really bullish candles, have really turned from downtrending over here from May all the way up to, it's actually uptrending now for the month of July. This is a pretty bullish development, right? If you look at the MCDX Plus, you can also see that the whales are coming in. So these are some pretty bullish development for the stock on the monthly chart. Let's look at the weekly and see whether or not we see something a little bit different here. Not really. It looks very bullish in terms of the whalish momentum, in terms of the fact that it broke above the Ichimoku cloud, and it broke above that on pretty decent volume, and actually continued to go up higher on a really good decent volume here as well. Even came back and back tested it and formed a very, very nice demand candle over here. And so far you have some pretty high volume pushing up. As you can see, a lot of whalish momentum here coming for this stock. When things get above the cloud, when things get above the Tenkan and Kijun lines, and when you have a little bit of a katana, when the Tenkan and Kijun are crossing over another and they're kind of basically going together upwards, there is a potential that Bitdeer could run up a lot higher over time. Now, question is, are we going to potentially run into a little bit of an overextension here on the weekly chart? The answer to that is yeah, it's overextended. It is above the Bollinger Band, but don't forget it was above the Bollinger Band here. And sure enough, I mean, price did go down from 10 bucks to maybe around 8 bucks. But eventually it just basically got back down here, tested demand, and went up going higher, right? The weekly Bollinger Band is very, very nicely expanding. This basically tells me that I think price is going to end up having a lot of bullish continuation, although we are a little bit overextended here on the upper Bollinger Band. And if you end up buying here, you do have to consider the possibility of having a little bit of a retracement to the mean, which could be anywhere around like 9-8 bucks. That's always a possibility. But I think that there's also a possibility if you wait to buy lower, or if you sell here, you could potentially miss some pretty significant uptrend that could be coming soon because the whales are in. And it's only overextended here on the weekly chart, but it's not really overextended at all on the monthly chart. On the monthly chart, almost looks like 14 bucks is going to be a magnet to kind of suck price up there. So just something to think about. Like, even look at the daily chart. Daily chart's not overextended at all. It looks like it just wants to have a little bit more of a bullish continuation here, and whales are almost totally in now. It doesn't mean that it's not going to retrace back to the mean, right? That's what I was talking about. It could potentially go down to like 8 or 9 bucks, which should be the median over here, right? But overall, it's a very, very nice trend. So that's really, Bitdeer. If you pull up the GAN that I have here, you do have a little bit more of a resistance that is running into. In terms of the resistance, you're talking about the bottom of the arc over here, which is getting close. And you can also talk about the Fibonacci level, which is 0.7686, around $12. It's going to be another resistance zone. About that, you're going to have another resistance zone around 12.6, 12.7. So if you're patient, you might be able to get some decent entry, and it can potentially get rejected from some of these levels down up here, and it can go back down to maybe 10 bucks, which is going to be a pretty strong volume shelf. And if it ends up breaking down to the angle, maybe like $8 or $9, that would be a pretty decent entry too. Now, does it have to do that? No, but it is hitting resistance right now. So you may want to be patient, and if the stock runs away from you, then so be it. Technical analysis is all about probability. It's not about deterministic, right? When you see something that's being overextended, I have to point it out. And when you see something at or getting close to some pretty important resistance, I have to point it out. So that's Bitdeer. The other stock I want to talk about, and one that I actually do think that has a pretty decent look to it, is BTBT, which is Bitdigital. And Bitdigital has been basically going nowhere for quite some time, although it looks better than Riot, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. If you put up the Ichimoku Cloud, it's currently still stuck in a range between the Tenkan and Kijun. This actually looks like what Mara is doing right now as well. It's just stuck in a range. And it's not a bad thing. It's trying to break above the baseline or the red line over here. And it looks like it wants to push through, but so far it just doesn't quite have that momentum quite just yet, although you're starting to have a little bit more wellish momentum coming in. So this is not a bad look. Now, if you also pull up the Bollinger Band, if you pull up the Bollinger Band, you can see that price has kind of simply gone sideways for way too long. You're starting to get a little bit of a Bollinger Band squeezing here, but price is nicely staying above the 20-month moving average. And so far, it's not a bad look. It's just, unfortunately, still stuck in the range of the Tenkan and Kijun, but you did have a bullish cross that happened in February 2024, for what that's worth, right? If you look at the weekly chart, you can see that wells are very nicely coming in, and you can see that if I pull up the Ichimoku Cloud, it is challenging the cloud here. It challenged the cloud last week. It had a very nice bullish engulfing candle that engulfs the past 3 previous candles, but it got rejected at the top of the Ichimoku Cloud. Well, so far we end up staying inside the cloud, and that's a bullish kind of development. And you also have on the weekly a little bit of a bullish Tenkan Kijun cross, so there might be a little bit more bullish continuation. I think most likely it might end up pushing above the cloud and potentially go higher. Certainly the wellish momentum seemed to support that as a possibility. If you look at the Bollinger Band here on the weekly, you can see that it was squeezed, and then right now it looks like it wants to expand, but it's just having a little hard time trying to expand above the upper Bollinger Band. So you might take a few more impulsive candles to really try to expand the Bollinger Band and allowing the bull trend to continue. But this is a very nice look because it just squeezed, and it looks like it is just trying to expand. And price is currently above the 20-week moving average, which tells me most likely whenever this thing expands, it's going to ride up along the upper Bollinger Band to go up higher, kind of like it did over here, right? So far so great. If I'm going to look at the Gann chart that I've drawn for BTBT, it is very obvious in terms of what it's trying to do. It has been gotten rejected at the 0.136 Fibonacci level around $5 for quite some time, and it's been oscillating between this Fibonacci level here as well as the arc down here below, both the lower arc as well as the higher arc. What it's been doing is really just been oscillating between these levels. It looks like we're able to break above this arc for good, back test it a little bit, and the next natural level I think is going to be either $4 or $5 somewhere up here. And if it's able to break above that, you're talking about maybe getting to like around $8 in a hurry, maybe even $10 here in a hurry. And that would not be too shabby because that's around a 3x from where it is right now. Now, obviously, it is tough to talk about that because we're still underneath resistance and we're getting pretty close to resistance, and we got rejected twice from before, but I do like the fact that it is doing some pretty nice back test and looks like it wants to gravitate back up to the next level. So we will see what happens, but I do think maybe the third time is a charm. Maybe we're able to break about the $5 zone and get to around 8 to 10. That would be a very, very bullish development. Certainly looks like on the weekly, Wells will want to do something here. So we'll have to see what happens with BTBT, but it's not a bad looking chart. If you are talking about another one that has turned more bullish, it's going to be HUD-8. HUD-8's monthly chart looks like there's some increase in wellish momentum and decrease in retail. This is going to be good for is momentum. And basically it's just been forming a cup here, and a second cup that's a little bit smaller. So this is still a very nice reaccumulation type look to it, especially when the buying volume seemed to be pretty high, right? This seems like a pretty nice like reaccumulation type second cup, if you will, right? Pulling up the Ichimoku cloud. Now, you don't quite have the bullish cross of the Tikken and Kijun, but what you do have is prices above both of these averages, and it looks like we would potentially even come back and back test it down here a little bit if we're hitting some key resistance here, which I think we are. And that wouldn't be a bad thing if it goes back down to 13 or 12 and a half, somewhere around that zone, to really try to back test those levels and see whether or not we find support to go higher. If we're not able to find support, if we even go back down to like $10, that would still be a higher low, and that would still be a bull trend, right? Although I do like to see if there is a bullish cross here, and if we're able to bounce from one of these levels around 13.3 or around 12.3, that would not be a bad thing for further back test and bullish continuation. The cloud is up here around 30, which is probably where it's going to hit whenever it ends up getting done with solving these resistance levels down here. The Bollinger Band is looking very nice. You have the 20-month moving average, because of the nice bullish candle here in June that went all the way up to the upper Bollinger Band, is able to cause the 20-month moving average to curl up. And that is a bullish development. If you look at it a little bit more closely on the weekly chart, you can see that the whales have come in just within the last 8 weeks or so, and is forming a very, very nice up bull trend. Also, it actually looks a little bit more parabolic. Now, if you ask me whether or not things are getting overextended, the answer is yes, because the weekly, we are so far above the upper Bollinger Band. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes during a bull cycle, you can have price kind of just get above the upper Bollinger Band for a very long time, weeks on end, right? And who knows, maybe this is one of those times that a more parabolic bull trend is started. After all, we had a very, very strong squeeze, and we also have a lot of huge volume and a lot of wellish momentum. But I do think that most likely, if we end up pushing higher, it's probably going to end up being a wick, no matter how bullish things are, just like over here, right? So I do want to say, if you end up buying here, there is a potential for you to have some short-term pain, but probably a lot of long-term gain, because the weekly Bollinger Band looks like it's nicely expanding. Now, just looking at the Ichimoku cloud, it looks like it has reclaimed the top of the Ichimoku cloud. It pushed through the cloud here on huge increasing volume, and it wouldn't be the end of the world if it comes back down to 13 or maybe even 14.3 or even 13, or even around down here around 12.3, right? To backtest the bottom of the cloud, that would not be a bad thing, because things are a little bit overextended on the Bollinger Band. But it doesn't have to do that. Obviously it can just keep going on higher. Probability-wise speaking, I think that we might be getting to an area where we might need to start to worry about what is going to happen next, because you also have a lot of these kinds of, a little bit more of like a bearish diversions that are happening. So I'm just a little bit cautious up here. I wouldn't worry if you buy here if it goes down to like $12. It's probably going to bounce up, because this looks like it's getting some pretty impulsive price action coming pretty soon. But I think this current look over here is actually very, very similar to this look of this cup over here before its breakout. I think we might be close to a potential parabolic bull trend with some of these Bitcoin miners, and you may not see it coming. Now, is it going to take like a couple more weeks to do that? Is it going to take a couple more months to do that? I do not know. All I know is that it looks like whales have been coming in and really trying to push things up maybe a little bit higher. but we are hitting some pretty important resistance. Just know that even around like the 16 to 18 zone has been a resistance over here for like basically 3 years now, right? And it was also previously serving as support over here 4 years ago. So is it just going to break out above? Probably not. You're going to end up having some workout to try to get it out. But that's okay. Talking about the next one that is also looking pretty decent is going to be CORZ. This is CORZ monthly chart. It's really very uninformative, with the exception that in May it was a bullish engulfing candle over the last 3 candles. That's really the only thing I can say about the monthly chart. Now on the weekly chart, you start to get a little bit of a Tenkan, which is basically serving as support and allowing price to go up higher over time. And with CORZ, you can see before, a few weeks ago, it was overextended because it was way outside the upper Bollinger Band. We got punished for it through price and time, and so far it's just forming a really nice bull flag here and get back inside the upper Bollinger Band and potentially allow the Bollinger Band to continue to expand, and it's expanding like crazy and allowing price to go up a lot higher over time. That's really all I have for CORZ. Like, there's really not much to say. I can look at the daily chart. The daily chart is saying that something big's going to happen. If I have to guess what that something big's going to happen is going to be up or down, is probably going to be up. So I do also like the fact that it's still majority whale coming in, at least like 70%. There's not really a whole lot of retail, even throughout this, consolidation phase that's been over the last couple of weeks. So that's CORZ. The question now is, am I bullish on RIOT? And it doesn't matter if I'm bullish on RIOT or not. All I know about RIOT is that the trend is not yet bullish and the momentum is not yet there. So if you're a momentum chaser, there are really currently no signs that the momentum is there for you to push price up higher. And you can also see that even though we had a bullish cross, price is still currently under both the Tenkan and Kijun over here, and there's just a lot more resistance that it needs to break above, so it needs to prove itself. Not much whalish momentum here, so also something to think about. Bollinger Band is underneath the 20-month moving average. It'll be nice to kind of break above it and maybe even backtest it before it goes higher, but it's still positive sloping, just like the fact that you have a little bit of a glass half full situation here with the Ichimoku cloud. You do have a bullish cross, right? So we'll see whether or not it's able to take advantage of this and actually do something with it. But currently you're still underneath a lot of resistance. Even the bull market support band, which I didn't show for the other ones, is also resistance here as well on the weekly. So what is going to happen? Well, it's trendless right now. Even if I pull up the EMA ribbon, which basically shows you the 20-week and the 50-week, and it forms a very nice ribbon here, and so far the trend is still down, even though it had an initial uptrend over here. Right now the trend is still a little bit down until it proves itself, and it doesn't take a whole lot to do. All it has to do is really trying to keep piercing through the EMA ribbon here, and it would have a chance potentially. We will see. This is the monthly chart. Now let's look at the weekly chart and see what we're seeing here on the Ichimoku. Well, it's underneath resistance. The conversion line has served as resistance for the week so far, and it's also underneath the clouds, underneath the baseline, and it's underneath the bull market support band, and it's squeezing a little bit, but price currently is underneath the 20-week moving average, so it's a little bit scary. Although I think most likely, honestly though, most likely it's going to end up pushing up, if Bitcoin does well. It's still a Bitcoin miner. And when you see a Bollinger Band squeezing, and when the price just kind of gone sideways for like basically all like a year and a half, I still favor bullish continuation, even though currently the weekly chart is not really necessarily supporting that because you have a lot of resistance there. So it does have to prove itself, but if I have to guess, I think it's going to do okay. Looking at the GAN here, you can see that it did a very nice bounce at the angle over here, and I think that was the bottom, and currently it looks like it got back to the angle. So far looks like the angle is holding, and if the angle is holding, the natural part is going to go is probably going to like around $14 or so, If it's able to push back above, we'll see whether or not it gets back to the 0.236 around 21 bucks, or the top of the arc here around 27. So it still has a lot of resistance to break through, not even talking about the Ichimoku cloud resistance, which is going to be around the zone over here at the arc, as well as this Fibonacci level. And not to mention about the bull market support band, which still has to break through, which is slightly negative sloping right now. So that is RIOT in a nutshell. Can it go up higher to some of the higher levels, for example the 40s, if it's able to break about these Fibonacci and arc levels? Next level is going to be around mid 40s. If it's able to break above that, you might talk about potentially challenging some triple digits here, but you still have a lot more resistance down here for RIOT to break through, unfortunately. The momentum is not yet with RIOT. As you can see, the weekly chart whales are not in, and the monthly chart whales are not in. You still have plenty of retail, so it's a little bit of a less fortunate situation. HIVE is okay. This is the monthly chart of HIVE. I'm going to pull up the Ichimoku cloud, no bullish cross underneath the Tenkan and Kijun. So it's not as bullish as the other one. There's a little bit more whale, but still predominantly retail. And still predominantly not much whalish momentum. But looking at the Bollinger Band, is still underneath the 20-month moving average. So you gotta be a little bit cautious when that happens, right? But if you also look at the weekly chart, maybe some slight whales are coming in. And if you're also looking at the Ichimoku is starting to reclaim the Tenkan line, potentially from resistance to support, but it's probably going to be stuck in a range here between the Tenkan and the Kijun, and it's also still way underneath the cloud, so it's not that bullish quite just yet. There's not much bullish momentum quite just yet. You do have a very nice Bollinger Band squeeze, and you do also have a very nice market support band reclaim, so we'll see whether or not we end up having some pretty decent bullish continuation from this or not. I would be very interested to find out. Okay. And the overall thing is, it is just at resistance, right? So it's kind of stuck in a range. It's stuck underneath this arc over here, and it's also stuck above the bull market support band, right? So eventually something we have to give. Is also stuck between the Tenkan, the blue line here, and the Kijun, the red line here. So it's stuck in a range. I don't know what's going to happen next. It might take another couple weeks to kind of sort things out. But currently it's stuck in a range. It's a little bit trendless, although it's turning positive because it's reclaiming here on a weekly the Tenkan line and the bull market support band. But things can still vary a lot because we're right at this arc of resistance. So we'll see what happens next, right? But that, in a nutshell, is HIVE. If you're talking about the targets, it was able to break about this arc. I think it could get back to around $4, $5. Then you're talking about maybe like 7, or maybe some of the higher targets up here on the teens, right? But really, the key is you're still stuck in the range, and you still have some pretty important resistance below. That is HIVE. Talking about Digihost, not many people, I think I used to get asked about this. Not many people ask about this anymore. And honestly, there's really not much to talk about. It's got a bullish cross stuck there, but it's stuck underneath the Tenkan and Kijun. So it's still a little bit equivocal on the Bollinger Band. It's still underneath the 20-month moving average, right? And on the weekly, and also, sorry, on the monthly, there's not much whales in there. And on the weekly, you see price just been kind of consoling sideways for a very long time, to the point that the Bollinger Band is squeezy. There could be a pretty big move that's coming up pretty soon. But it's still underneath the bull market support band. To be honest, I think that the next move is probably going to be up, because I feel like the next move for Bitcoin is probably going to be up, although we don't know for sure. It could end up getting rejected down here and go down further if Bitcoin ends up getting, not very bullish. But it looks like there might be a big move that's coming. I don't know which way for sure, but it is underneath the bull market support band, and it's also underneath the Tenkan, Kijun, and the cloud. So I'm a little bit worried about Digihost. It really has to prove itself. No whales either, right? Unfortunate. Let's look at another one that came up from our live stream with Tracker and Matt last night, is MIGI Mawson infrastructure. Mawson infrastructure has not yet had the bullish cross, and the Tenkan on the monthly is still serving as resistance. But the selling pressure on declining volume has already happened, and you're starting to have a little bit more whalish momentum to come in. So maybe Mawson is not so bad after all. Look at the Bollinger Band though, it's still underneath the 20 and it's not quite there yet, and there's still not enough to kind of get the stock up further. If you look at the bull market support band, it's just been oscillating, although it's trying to reclaim it. So that is a positive sign. On the weekly, you can also see some slight whales coming in, but it's still underneath the Ichimoku cloud, is trying to reclaim the Tenkan. All these like HIVE, Digihost, and MIGI, they're all very, very similar. Although it does look like some of them may be slightly better than others, they're all kind of either range bound or stuck underneath resistance. And this is just one of those that is having this same, very similar appearance here. Now, I do think that a bigger move is going to come here as well. I just don't know exactly which way it's going to be. And if I have to guess, since I'm still bullish on Bitcoin, I'm still going to think that the big move's going to be, to be to the upside. The problem with Bitcoin is there are really two, how do you say that, two school of thought. One is it's that we're going to find support right around here and it's going to bounce up a lot higher, or we're going to end up going sideways for a couple of months and it's going to bounce a lot higher. The second school of thought is we can really be going back down to like 53, 51, 48K before going up higher. And I actually think that if that ends up happening, I actually think there's a lot of technical damage done to Bitcoin. So I'm not sure whether or not that would necessarily happen. But it looks like a lot of these smaller miners look like they're squeezing, aren't it? Even for Riot, like Riot is not small, but that also looks like it's squeezing, So I do wonder, like, and HUT already squeezed and the next move was up, right? So I wonder what the next move is going to be. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to these miners. Have a good one. Bye.